Right before our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband sat me down and casually said, "I want a divorce, but I'm keeping the house since you can't afford it." His family smirked and nodded in agreement. I quietly stood up, slid a folder across the table, and said, "Then you'll love what my lawyer sent me this morning." As he read the first page, his smug expression vanished, and his mother screamed, "This can't be happening." I sat at the dining table, hands wrapped around my coffee cup as my husband, Adam, cleared his throat. His parents sat beside him, his mother already smirking, his father looking disinterested, as if this was just another Tuesday. Adam folded his hands on the table, leaning in slightly like he was about to deliver a business proposition. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice calm. "But I'm keeping the house since you can't afford it." His mother's smirk widened. His father gave a slight nod, approving of his son's decision, as if this had been discussed at length without me. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face blank. I had been expecting this. For months, I'd noticed the change. The late nights at the office. The whispered phone calls. The way his family, who had never been particularly warm to me, started acting even colder. And then there was the money. Money had always been a point of tension. Adam came from a well-off family. I did not. His parents had made it clear from the start that they believed I was beneath them. A small-town girl who had worked 2 jobs to put herself through college. They thought I wasn't worthy of their son, that I should be grateful he had chosen me. I never let their words get to me. I had built a good life with Adam, or so I thought. But over the past year, the bank statements stopped making sense. The joint savings we had built over 15 years was dwindling, but I wasn't the one spending it. When I asked Adam about it, he brushed me off. "I handle the finances, don't worry about it," he'd say, kissing my forehead like I was a child. I had worried about it, so I started looking into things. And what I found made my blood run cold. So now, as Adam sat across from me with that smug look on his face, as his mother nodded in approval, as if they had won some silent battle I wasn't even aware I was fighting, I calmly set my coffee down. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. I slid it across the table. "Then you'll love what my lawyer sent me this morning," I said. Adam frowned, his confidence faltering just slightly. He picked up the folder and opened it. As his eyes scanned the first page, the color drained from his face. His mother peered over his shoulder, her expression twisting into something ugly. "This can't be happening," she screeched. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head slightly. "Oh, but it is." And I let them read. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of partnership. That's what I thought we had. Turns out Adam had been planning this for a long time. The first thing I discovered was that Adam had been funneling money from our joint account into a separate account under his name only. Quietly. Methodically. For years. At first, it was small amounts, just enough that I wouldn't notice. A couple hundred here, a few thousand there. But then it got bolder. 10,000. 20. Until, one day, I logged into our account and saw that what should have been over 6 figures in savings had somehow dwindled to barely enough to cover a month's worth of bills. I confronted him, of course. I asked him where the money had gone. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You wouldn't understand," he said, shaking his head. "Just let me handle it." That's when I knew. He had no intention of handling anything. So I hired a forensic accountant. What they found? Devastating. Adam wasn't just moving money. He was gambling it. He was investing in shady business deals. He was spending thousands on someone who was not me. And worse, his parents were in on it. The house? The one he so smugly assumed he'd be keeping because I couldn't afford it? Turns out I didn't need to afford it. Because it wasn't his to take. See, when we bought the house, Adam's parents had insisted on helping. They pitched in a significant amount for the down payment, an amount they made sure I knew about every chance they got. What they didn't realize was that their help came with a paper trail. They had put money into the house, yes, but they had also put their names on it. Which meant they had claim. Which meant when I discovered that Adam had been secretly selling off our assets, including trying to leverage the house behind my back, I had legal grounds to block him. Because of his debts, because of his shady dealings, because of the fraud he had committed in my name. Yes, I found that too. The courts wouldn't be granting him anything. The house? Wouldn't be his. The accounts? Wouldn't be his. The business he had tried to start with stolen money? Gone. And the best part? His parents, who had smirked at me from across the table, were now realizing that their son's financial ruin was also theirs. Because they had co-signed on his failed investments. Because they had helped him hide assets. Because they had enabled him, encouraged him, pushed him to believe that he could discard me like an old toy and walk away unscathed. His mother clutched her pearls, actually clutched her pearls, while his father, usually so stoic, rubbed a hand over his face, realizing just how deep this went. Adam slammed the folder shut, jaw clenched. "This isn't over," he hissed. I smiled. Oh, honey, I said, standing up and grabbing my coffee. It was over the second you underestimated me. And then I walked out of my own house. For now. Because soon, it would be mine. Adam sat there, his face twisted in a mix of anger and panic. His mother was still frozen in shock, while his father flipped through the documents, his hands shaking slightly. I could feel their world crashing down around them. But this was just the beginning. As I walked out of the dining room, Adam shot up from his chair. You're not taking my house, he growled. I stopped in my tracks and turned to face him. You mean our house? I said, raising an eyebrow. Or do you mean the house you tried to sell behind my back? His jaw clenched. His mother snapped out of her daze and pointed a trembling finger at me. You manipulative little. I held up a hand. Careful, I said, my voice calm but firm. You might want to save your breath for the lawyers you'll be needing soon. I walked out the front door, letting it slam behind me. The next few weeks were pure chaos. Adam started calling and texting nonstop. The messages swung between apologetic and furious. Let's just talk. We can figure this out. You have no right to do this to me. This is my house. You can't win. But I didn't respond. Instead, I let my lawyer do the talking. And that's when Adam made his next big mistake. One night, around 2 a.m., I got a call from a neighbor. Hey, she said, her voice hesitant. I don't mean to alarm you, but Adam's at the house, and he's throwing stuff onto the lawn. I sat up in bed. What do you mean throwing stuff? I mean he's tossing furniture out the front door like a madman. His parents are there too. I was already getting dressed. Did you call the cops? I wasn't sure if I should, but I think you need to get over here. I grabbed my car keys and drove straight there. When I pulled up, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The front yard was a disaster. My couch, my chairs, even my books, everything I had brought into that house was scattered across the lawn. Adam stood on the porch, breathing heavily, while his mother barked orders like a general. She doesn't live here anymore, she yelled. Get rid of all of it. His father stood silently, his hands on his hips, looking more tired than angry. I stepped out of the car, phone in hand. What the hell are you doing? Adam turned, his face red. You left, didn't you? You walked out. That means you abandoned it. This is my house now. I let out a slow breath. You really don't know the law, do you? I walked up the driveway, holding my phone high so he could see the screen. By the way, the cops are already on their way. His mother's face twisted in fury. You called them? No, I said, smiling. The neighbor did. Right on cue, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. The next few minutes were a blur. The cops asked questions, I explained everything, and Adam stood there stammering, realizing he had made a massive mistake. Because in his desperate attempt to claim the house, he had just committed illegal eviction and destruction of property. And now? He was in trouble. But Adam wasn't done. A few days later, my lawyer called. He's fighting back, she said. He's trying to drag this out in court. I sighed. Of course he is. He's also claiming that you were the one hiding money, she added. I nearly laughed. Oh, that's rich. It won't hold up, she assured me. We have all the records. But be prepared, he's desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. Sure enough, the very next day, I got a notification from my bank. Someone had tried to access my personal account. And I knew exactly who it was. Adam was spiraling. He was losing control, and he knew it. So now he was trying to find any way to hurt me. But what he didn't realize. I had been one step ahead of him this entire time. And this fight? It was far from over. Adam trying to access my personal bank account was the last straw. Up until now, he had been reckless, arrogant, and manipulative, but this was desperate and illegal. I didn't just sit on the information. I took immediate action. I called my lawyer. We need to freeze everything, I said. All accounts, all assets. I don't want him touching a dime. She agreed and got to work. Within hours, Adam was locked out of every financial account that still had my name on it. And then, just for good measure, I sent him a single text. Nice try. Hope you enjoy explaining fraud to the judge. His response came within seconds. You're ruining my life. I stared at the message, a strange sense of satisfaction settling over me. No, Adam. You did that all on your own. But just when I thought I had backed him into a corner, he did something I never expected. He moved his mistress into the house. And not just any mistress. It was someone I knew. Her name was Danielle. She was a mutual acquaintance, someone I had met through Adam's work events. She had always been overly friendly with him, laughing at his stupid jokes, touching his arm a little too often, but I never thought much of it. Turns out I should have. A neighbor sent me a picture of them unloading suitcases from her car, walking into my house like they had just won a prize. I stared at the photo, my hands shaking with rage. I wasn't heartbroken. That stage had passed. Now? I was livid. This man had drained our finances. He had lied, cheated, tried to steal the house, and now, he had the audacity to move another woman in before we were even legally divorced? I wasn't going to take this lying down. I forwarded the picture to my lawyer. We need to move faster, I said. She sighed. He's digging his own grave, I promise. Just let him keep making mistakes. But I wasn't feeling patient anymore. So I made a move of my own. I had been holding onto a piece of information, waiting for the right moment to use it. And now it was time. See, Adam hadn't just been bad with money. He had been committing fraud in other ways, too. A few years back, he had taken out a massive loan in his parents' name without telling them. He forged the signatures, used their credit, and then gambled away most of the money. His parents had no idea because he had been making the payments on time. Until recently. Because now he had no money left. So I made an anonymous tip. One phone call. That's all it took. A week later, his parents received a notice from the bank. And then? A lawsuit. They were being investigated for fraud, and unless they could prove they hadn't taken out the loan themselves, they were on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It didn't take long for them to connect the dots. And when they did, all hell broke loose. I was sitting in a cafe when I got the message from Adam's mother. You did this. I hope you're happy. I smirked and took a sip of my coffee before replying. No, Adam did this. You just covered for him too long. That same night, Adam called me. I let it ring. Then he texted. We need to talk. Please. I ignored it. An hour later, another text came in. Danielle left. I read it twice. Then another one. My parents aren't speaking to me. And then the final one. Are you happy now? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the words on the screen. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. But this wasn't over yet. Not even close. Adam's desperate texts kept coming, but I didn't reply. Not at first. But then, something changed. A few days after Danielle left him, I got a call from an unknown number. I wouldn't have answered, but something told me to pick up. It was Adam's father. You need to come to the house, he said, his voice strained. Now. I hesitated. Why would I do that? There was a long pause. Then, in a tone I had never heard from him before, he said, please. I didn't know what I expected when I pulled up to my house, but it wasn't this. The once pristine lawn was overgrown. The front door was cracked open. And inside? A disaster. Furniture was overturned, the walls had dents in them, and in the middle of the wreckage, Adam sat slumped on the couch. A bottle of whiskey sat on the coffee table, half empty. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. His mother stood stiffly near the doorway, arms crossed, as if trying to distance herself from the mess. His father sat across from Adam, looking worn down, defeated. I took a slow breath. Why am I here? Adam lifted his head, his gaze meeting mine. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw something other than arrogance or anger. I saw fear. I lost everything, he whispered. I didn't respond. He let out a bitter laugh. Danielle took what little money I had left. My parents are being sued. The house, it's not mine anymore, is it? I just stared at him. His mother let out a scoff. This is your fault, she spat at me. I turned to her slowly. My fault? I repeated, my voice calm but sharp. Yes, she snapped. You could have walked away. You could have left this alone. But no, you had to destroy everything. I let out a humorless laugh. I destroyed everything? Or did your son do that when he drained our accounts? Or when he committed fraud? Or when he moved his mistress into my house? She opened her mouth, but Adam suddenly spoke. She's right, Mom. His mother's head whipped around. Excuse me? Adam swallowed hard. She's right. I did this. I thought I could. I don't know. Start over. Get rid of her and move on, but he looked around at the wreckage of his own life. I lost, and now I have nothing. For a moment, there was silence. Then his mother turned on him. You're just going to sit there and give up? She hissed. What else can I do? He shot back, his voice cracking. I tried to fight and I lost. His father, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. Maybe it's time you stop blaming her and start accepting the consequences of your own choices. His mother whirled on him. You're taking her side now? His father sighed. I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm just tired. And for the first time, I saw it. His father was tired. Tired of covering for Adam, tired of excusing him, tired of the mess. Adam's mother stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Adam rubbed a hand over his face. She'll never forgive me, he muttered. She'll never forgive me, I corrected. Because it's easier to hate me than to admit she raised a failure. Adam flinched. But he didn't argue. I looked around the house, taking it all in. I assume this means you're not going to fight me in court anymore? He let out a breath. What's the point? That's the smartest thing you've said in years. A bitter smirk crossed his face. Figures I'd only get smart once I've lost everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a set of documents, and placed them on the table. The final agreement, I said. Sign it. And this all ends today. Adam stared at the papers, his hand hovering over the pen. Then, with a resigned sigh, he signed. Just like that, it was over. The aftermath, the house was mine. Legally. Officially. Adam moved out the next day. He packed what little he had left and left without another word. His parents, well, his father seemed relieved it was over, but his mother? She refused to acknowledge me. That was fine. She was no longer my problem. Danielle? She disappeared. Last I heard, she had drained what little money Adam had left and moved on to her next target. As for me, I stood in my empty house, taking it all in. It felt different now. Lighter. Like the ghosts of my past had finally left. I should have felt victorious. But instead, I just felt tired. 15 years. That's how long I had spent building a life with someone who, in the end, saw me as disposable. 15 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice thrown away for greed. And yet, as I stood there, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Because for the first time in years, my future belonged only to me. And that was worth more than anything Adam had ever stolen.